The morning sun painted Nashville's skyline in shades of gold as Reba McEntire stepped out of her black SUV onto the sidewalk of Music Row. The familiar sounds of the city she'd called home for decades filled her ears. Distant guitar melodies drifting from recording studios, the hum of traffic, and the excited chatter of tourists hoping to catch a glimpse of their favorite stars. But today felt different. The envelope she'd received 2 weeks ago still puzzled her. No return address, just her name written in elegant handwriting and a simple invitation. You are cordially invited to witness something that will change how you see your legacy forever. October 15th, 10:00 a.m., 1247, Music Row West. Reba adjusted her denim jacket and looked up at the modest brick building before her. It looked like any other office space on the row. Nothing particularly special about it. She'd passed this building hundreds of times over the years, never giving it a second thought. "Ma'am, are you Reba McEntire?" A young woman with auburn hair and bright green eyes approached from the building's entrance. She wore a simple blue dress and carried herself with the confidence of someone much older than her apparent 30-something years. "That would be me," Reba replied with a warm smile. "And you are?" "Emma Richardson. I've been waiting for this moment for 3 years." Emma's voice carried a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "Thank you so much for coming. I know the invitation was mysterious." Reba chuckled, her Oklahoma drawl evident. "Honey, in this business, mysterious invitations either lead to the best surprises or the worst disasters. I'm hoping for the former." Emma's face lit up. "Oh, it's definitely the former. Would you please follow me? There's something I need to show you before we go inside." They walked to a small courtyard behind the building, where Emma stopped and turned to face Reba directly. The morning breeze carried the scent of autumn leaves, and somewhere in the distance, a street musician was playing Fancy on his guitar. "Reba, what I'm about to show you, it's been a labor of love. Not just mine, but hundreds of people who've been touched by your music, your story, your strength." Emma's hands trembled slightly as she spoke. 3 years ago, I was working as a music journalist, and I kept encountering the same thing over and over again. People whose lives had been fundamentally changed by your songs, your example, your resilience. Reba felt a flutter in her chest. "Emma, what exactly are you trying to tell me?" "I'm trying to tell you that behind this door is the first museum ever dedicated entirely to your life, your music, and your impact on the world. And today, you're going to see it for the first time." The words hit Reba like a physical force. She took a step back, her hand instinctively reaching for the courtyard's brick wall for support. "A museum. About me? About you, your journey, and the lives you've touched. Every exhibit, every display, every story inside has been donated by people whose lives you've changed. We have letters from soldiers who carried your CDs through deployment, from single mothers who found strength in Strong Enough to Bend, from families who healed together, listening to The Greatest Man I Never Knew." Reba felt tears forming in her eyes. In all her years in the spotlight, through all the albums, awards, and accolades, she'd never imagined something like this. "Emma, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything yet. Just let me show you what your life has meant to the world." Emma led her to a plain wooden door marked only with the number 1247. As she inserted an old-fashioned brass key, Reba noticed her own hands were shaking. The door opened with a soft creak, revealing a small lobby with warm lighting and the faint sound of acoustic guitar music playing softly in the background. But what took Reba's breath away wasn't the decor or the music. It was the wall directly across from the entrance. Floor to ceiling, It was covered with photographs of her throughout the decades. But they weren't the typical publicity shots or red carpet photos. These were candid moments. Reba laughing with her band backstage, consoling a crying fan, visiting hospitals, performing at benefit concerts, sitting on her front porch with her guitar. "How did you get all of these?" Reba whispered. "People sent them to us. Fans, photographers, venue owners, people who worked with you. Everyone wanted to contribute something." Emma's voice was soft with reverence. "This is just the beginning." As they moved deeper into the space, Reba saw that what had appeared to be a simple office building from the outside had been completely transformed. The walls had been removed to create a flowing, open space divided into different themed areas. Soft lighting illuminated displays of stage costumes, guitars, handwritten lyrics, and personal memorabilia. But it was the centerpiece that made Reba stop in her tracks and cover her mouth with her hands. In the center of the main room stood a perfect replica of the modest stage at the Cheyenne Saloon in Oklahoma, where she'd performed her very first professional gig at age 16. Every detail was exact. The scratched wooden floor, the mismatched microphone stand, even the old Wurlitzer jukebox in the corner. "My God," Reba breathed. "How did you—" "The Cheyenne burned down 15 years ago." We tracked down the original owner's son. He had photographs, blueprints, even some of the original fixtures stored in his barn. It took us 8 months to recreate it perfectly. Emma watched Reba's face carefully. "There's a recording booth set up, so visitors can experience what it might have felt like to be in the audience that first night you performed." Reba walked slowly toward the replica stage, her boots echoing in the quiet space. She could almost hear the nervous laughter from that terrified 16-year-old girl, could almost smell the cigarette smoke and beer that had filled the air that night so many decades ago. "Emma, this is—" Reba's voice broke. "I can't believe this exists. And this is only the first room. We have 5 more to show you, each one dedicated to a different aspect of your life and career. But more importantly, each one filled with stories of how you've touched people's lives." Reba turned back to Emma, tears flowing freely now. "Why? Why would you do all this?" Emma smiled, and for a moment, she looked much younger. "Because 3 years ago, I was going through the worst time of my life. My marriage had ended, I'd lost my job, my father was dying of cancer, and I honestly didn't see the point in going on. One night, I was driving aimlessly around Nashville, and 'Consider Me Gone' came on the radio. I pulled over and just sat there crying, listening to those lyrics about finding the strength to leave when you know you have to." She paused, collecting herself. "That song saved my life that night. It made me realize that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is start over. So I did. I left journalism, learned about museum curation, and spent 3 years tracking down every person I could find who had a similar story. And Reba, there are thousands of them." Reba walked over to Emma and pulled her into a tight hug. "Honey, you have no idea what this means to me. Actually, I think I do, because that's exactly why we built it." The sound of the front door opening interrupted their moment. A tall man with graying hair and kind eyes walked in, followed by an elderly woman using a walking cane. "Reba, I'd like you to meet Jake Harrison and Linda Carter. They've been waiting to meet you for a very long time." Jake stepped forward first, and Reba could see he was trying to control his emotions. "Ms. McEntire, I'm a Vietnam veteran, and your song, 'The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia,' got me through some of the darkest nights of my life. When I heard about this museum, I had to be here for opening day." Linda Carter moved slowly but purposefully toward Reba. "Dear, I'm a retired nurse, and for 30 years, I played your music for patients in hospice care. Your voice brought comfort to hundreds of families during their most difficult hours. Reba felt overwhelmed by the weight of their words. These weren't just fans. These were people whose lives had been genuinely impacted by her work in ways she'd never even considered. Jake, Linda, I'm honored to meet you both. But I have to ask, how did Emma find you? Jake chuckled. She didn't find us. We found her. Word got out somehow about what she was doing, and people started reaching out. Veterans groups, nursing associations, fan clubs, radio stations. Everyone wanted to contribute something to make sure your story was told completely. Linda nodded. This museum isn't just about your career, dear. It's about the ripple effect of art. How one person's courage to share their truth can echo through thousands of other lives. Emma gestured toward the deeper areas of the museum. Are you ready to see more? Because every room has stories like theirs. Reba looked around the recreated saloon one more time, still hardly believing it was real. Emma, before we go any further, I need to understand something. How did you fund all this? Museums aren't cheap. That's the beautiful part. We didn't need traditional funding. People donated everything. Their time, their skills, their materials, their stories. The building owner, Robert Chen, gave us the space rent-free for 5 years when he heard what we were doing. Local craftsmen donated labor. Musicians donated their time to create the audio guides. Even the mayor's office helped us navigate the permits and regulations. It's like the whole city wanted this to exist, Jake added. Emma smiled. Not just the city. We've had contributions from all 50 states and 12 countries. There's a display case full of items sent by international fans who saved up for months just to mail us something to include. As they prepared to move deeper into the museum, Reba felt a profound shift happening inside her. For decades, she'd seen her career as a series of personal milestones, albums recorded, songs that hit #1, awards won, venues sold out. But standing in this space, surrounded by people whose lives had been changed by her music, she was beginning to understand that her true legacy wasn't about chart positions or gold records. All right, she said, taking a deep breath and wiping her tears. Show me what my life looks like through other people's eyes. Emma grinned and led them toward a doorway marked the Oklahoma Years. As they crossed the threshold, Reba gasped. The next room had been designed to look like the inside of her childhood home, complete with the old upright piano where she'd learned to play, the kitchen table where she'd written her first songs, and walls covered with family photographs spanning generations. But what made her heart race was the sound filling the room. Her own voice at age 12, singing at a local talent show, a recording she hadn't heard in over 40 years. How in the world do you have this? Your elementary school music teacher, Mrs. Dorothy Williams, kept a copy all these years. When she heard about the museum, she insisted we include it. She said she always knew that little red-haired girl was destined for something special. Reba sat down heavily in a chair that looked exactly like the one from her childhood kitchen. The emotions washing over her were almost too much to process. Mrs. Williams is still alive. She's 93 now, lives in a retirement home in Oklahoma City. She wanted to be here today, but her health wouldn't allow the trip. However, Emma handed Reba a handwritten letter. She wrote this for you. Reba's hands shook as she unfolded the letter, written in the same careful penmanship she remembered from elementary school. My dearest Reba, she read aloud, I have thought of you often over the years and watched with such pride as you became the woman I always knew you could be. Your mother used to say you had music in your bones, And I saw it from the very first day you walked into my classroom. But what I'm most proud of isn't your fame or success. It's that you never forgot where you came from, and you never stopped using your gifts to lift up other people. This museum is proof that the little girl who sang with such passion about life and love grew up to touch the hearts of the world. I am so proud to have been a small part of your journey. With all my love, Mrs. Dorothy Williams. By the time Reba finished reading, she was crying so hard she could barely see. Jake handed her his handkerchief without a word. Emma, this is overwhelming. In the best possible way, but still overwhelming. I know, and we're just getting started. The next room Emma led them to was designed as a replica of the Grand Ole Opry stage, complete with the famous circle of wood, cut from the original Ryman Auditorium stage. But instead of being empty, the space was filled with dozens of chairs, each one marked with a small plaque. What are all these chairs for? Reba asked. Each chair represents a significant performance in your career, Emma explained. But more importantly, sitting in each chair is a recording from someone who was in the audience that night, explaining what that performance meant to them. Reba approached the first chair, marked October 13, 1977, Grand Ole Opry debut. She pressed the small button on the armrest, and a gravelly male voice filled the air. My name is Frank Rodriguez, and I was 17 years old when I saw Reba McEntire make her Opry debut. I'd driven down from Kentucky with my grandfather, who was dying of lung cancer. It was the last trip we ever took together. When this young woman walked out on that stage and sang Invitation to the Blues with such pure, raw emotion, my grandfather grabbed my hand and whispered, "That girl's going to change country music forever." He was right. But more than that, seeing someone so young have the courage to stand up there and bare her soul gave me the courage to pursue my own dreams in music. I never made it big like Reba did, but I've spent 40 years teaching kids to play guitar, and I tell every one of them about the night I saw a 22-year-old girl show the world what fearless looked like. Reba stared at the chair, speechless. She remembered that night vividly, how terrified she'd been, how her hands had shaken as she walked out onto that legendary stage. She'd never imagined that her fear might have looked like fearlessness to someone else. There are 43 more chairs, Emma said gently, each one with a story like that. Linda Carter had settled into a chair marked 1993, Benefit Concert for Tornado Victims. She pressed the button, and a woman's voice, thick with emotion, began to speak. My name is Patricia Helms, and in May of 1993, a tornado destroyed my entire town of Saragossa, Texas. We lost everything: our house, our business, most of our belongings, and worst of all, my 8-year-old daughter Jenny. When word got out that Reba McEntire was organizing a benefit concert for us, I honestly didn't care. I didn't think anything could help with the grief and devastation we were feeling. But my husband convinced me to go, said we needed to get out of the shelter for a few hours. The recording paused for a moment, and Reba could hear the woman composing herself. When Reba walked out on that stage and sang, "If you see him, if you see her," I broke down completely. But then she did something I'll never forget. She stepped away from the microphone and said, "This song is for all the parents in the audience who are missing their children tonight. They want you to know they're okay. They're not in pain anymore, and they're watching over you with love." I don't know how she knew exactly what I needed to hear, but in that moment, I felt Jenny with me for the first time since we lost her. That concert didn't just raise money to rebuild our town. It gave us the strength to believe we could rebuild our lives. Reba had to sit down. She remembered that concert, remembered seeing the devastation and feeling helpless in the face of such profound loss. She'd struggled with what to say, how to offer comfort to people facing unimaginable grief. She'd had no idea her words had reached anyone so deeply. Jake was standing by a chair marked 2001 Tribute Concert for September 11th Victims. He looked at Reba questioningly, and she nodded. He pressed the button. "This is Captain Michael O'Brien, FDNY, retired. On September 11th, 2001, I lost 23 brothers from my firehouse. The months that followed were the darkest of my life. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't understand how the world was supposed to keep turning after something so horrific. My wife heard about a tribute concert happening in Madison Square Garden, and she practically dragged me there." The firefighter's voice was steady but filled with emotion. When Reba sang Tears in Heaven that night, she dedicated it to all the first responders who didn't make it home. But then, she did something that still gives me chills 15 years later. She asked every first responder in the audience to stand up, and she said, "These men and women ran toward danger when everyone else was running away. And they continue to do that every single day. They are heroes not just because of what they did on September 11th, but because of who they choose to be every day." The entire audience gave us a standing ovation that lasted 10 minutes. It was the first time since the attacks that I felt proud instead of just broken. Her words reminded me that grief and heroism can coexist, that honoring the dead means continuing to live with purpose. Reba was crying again, remembering that night, remembering how inadequate she'd felt trying to offer comfort in the face of such national tragedy. But hearing Captain O'Brien's words, she realized that sometimes the most important thing an artist can do is simply show up and acknowledge the pain. Emma placed a gentle hand on Reba's shoulder. "Are you okay? We can take a break if you need to." "No," Reba said firmly, wiping her tears. "I need to hear these. I never knew. I mean, you perform, you sing, you try to connect with people, but you rarely get to know the real impact. These stories are incredible. That's exactly why we created this space. So many artists never get to fully understand the ripple effect of their work." Emma gestured toward the far wall. "But the chairs are just one part of this room. Over here, we have something else I think will surprise you." They walked to a display case that held dozens of objects: a soldier's dog tags, a wedding ring, a child's teddy bear, a graduation cap, a pair of worn work boots. Each item had a small description card. "These are items people sent us, each one connected to a specific song of yours and a specific moment in their lives," Emma explained. Reba read the first card aloud. "These dog tags belong to my son, Army Specialist David Chen, who was killed by an IED in Afghanistan in 2004. Before he deployed, his favorite song was The Greatest Man I Never Knew. After he died, I couldn't listen to it for years because it reminded me of all the conversations we never had. But on the 5th anniversary of his death, I finally played it again. And instead of making me sad, it made me grateful for the time we did have together." David's dog tags are donated in honor of all the children who leave this world before their parents, and all the parents who learn to find peace in their memories. Jake pointed to another item. "Look at this one." Reba read, "This wedding ring belonged to my late husband, Robert. We danced to Forever Love at our wedding in 1989, and it became our song throughout 30 years of marriage. When he was in hospice care last year, I would play it for him every night. Even when he could no longer speak, he would squeeze my hand during the chorus. This ring is donated to represent the power of music, to connect souls, even when words are no longer possible." Item after item told similar stories. Moments of grief transformed into gratitude, fear transformed into courage, loneliness transformed into connection. Reba realized she was seeing her life's work from a completely different perspective. "Emma, How many people contributed to this museum? Over 3,000 directly. But the stories represent hundreds of thousands more. For every person who sent us something, they mentioned 5 or 10 or 20 other people who had similar experiences with your music. Linda Carter was examining a child's teddy bear. This one says, the little girl carried it while listening to Sweet Dreams during her cancer treatments. She survived, and the bear is donated to represent hope. Oh, and this, Jake said, pointing to a framed photograph of a young couple, is from their daughter, who says they met at one of your concerts in 1985, and that your music has been the soundtrack to their entire marriage. They have 4 children and 12 grandchildren now. Reba felt overwhelmed by the scope of what she was seeing. I don't understand how my music could have had such specific impact on so many people. I mean, I always hoped it would connect with folks. But that's the thing about authentic art, Emma said. When you sing from a place of truth, it gives other people permission to feel their own truth. You've never been afraid to sing about difficult things, heartbreak, loss, resilience, starting over. Those are universal experiences, but they're also deeply personal ones. Your willingness to be vulnerable gave other people permission to be vulnerable too. They spent another hour in the performance room, listening to recordings and reading stories. Each chair, each item, each memory represented a life touched by Reba's music in some meaningful way. But what struck her most wasn't the individual stories. It was the recurring themes. Over and over, people talked about finding courage, finding strength to leave bad situations, finding the will to keep going after devastating losses, finding the confidence to pursue their dreams. You know what I'm realizing? Reba said as they prepared to move to the next room. I always thought my job was to entertain people, to give them a break from their problems. But these stories, it sounds like maybe my job was to help people face their problems. Emma smiled. Maybe that's what the best entertainment does. It doesn't help us escape our lives. It helps us live them. As they walked toward the next exhibit space, Reba noticed a guest book on a pedestal near the exit. She opened it and saw that it was already filled with hundreds of signatures and messages, even though the museum wasn't officially open yet. Who wrote all these? Construction workers, delivery people, city officials, other musicians who heard about what we were doing and wanted to stop by. Word spread pretty quickly through the Nashville music community. Reba read a few of the messages. Thank you for showing us what honesty sounds like. Your music saved my marriage. Because of you, I learned that strong women can also be gentle. You made it okay to be from a small town and still dream big. Oh my, Reba whispered, reading one particular message. This one is from Dolly Parton. Emma leaned over to look. What did she write? She wrote, Reba, honey, this museum is proof that the best artists don't just make music. They make hope. Congratulations on a life well lived and a legacy well earned. Love, Dolly. The simple sincerity of Dolly's words brought fresh tears to Reba's eyes. In an industry known for competition and ego, having the respect and admiration of someone like Dolly Parton felt like the highest honor imaginable. All right, she said, closing the guest book carefully. I think I'm ready for the next room, but I have to warn you, I don't know how much more of this my heart can take. Emma laughed. Well, the next room might be the most powerful one yet. It's called Letters to Reba, and it's entirely made up of correspondence we've received from people who wanted to tell you personally how your music affected their lives. As they walked through the doorway, Reba steeled herself for whatever emotional revelations awaited. But nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to discover about the true reach and impact of her life's work. The third room was designed like a cozy library, with comfortable reading chairs scattered throughout. and walls lined floor to ceiling with what appeared to be thousands of letters, cards, and handwritten notes. Soft lighting created an intimate atmosphere, and the gentle sound of acoustic guitar music played softly in the background. "My God!" Reba breathed, taking in the scope of the display. "How many letters are there?" "We received over 12,000, Emma replied. "We've displayed about 3,000 here, organized by theme. The rest are archived digitally, but every single one has been read and categorized." Linda Carter had settled into one of the reading chairs and picked up a thick binder from the side table. "These are organized by topic?" "Yes. We have sections for letters about overcoming abuse, dealing with loss, finding courage to leave toxic relationships, pursuing dreams despite obstacles, healing family relationships, battling addiction, surviving illness, and many others." Reba walked to the wall marked New Beginnings and randomly selected a letter in a blue envelope. She opened it carefully and began to read aloud. "Dear Reba, my name is Jennifer Walsh, and I'm writing to you from Denver, Colorado. 3 years ago, I was trapped in an abusive marriage with no money, no job skills, and 2 young children. I felt completely hopeless until I heard, 'Is There Life Out There?' on the radio one day, while my husband was at work. The lyrics about a woman wondering if there's more to life than what she's currently experiencing spoke directly to my soul. I played that song over and over, and each time it gave me a little more courage to imagine a different future." Reba paused, her voice catching slightly, then continued. "It took me 8 months to plan my escape, but every time I got scared, I would listen to that song and remember that I deserved more than just surviving. I deserved to live. Today, I'm a certified nursing assistant. My children and I have our own apartment, and I'm engaged to a wonderful man who treats us all with respect and kindness. I know you probably get thousands of letters like this, but I needed you to know that your music literally saved our lives. Thank you for giving me permission to want more. Love, Jennifer." The silence in the room was profound. Reba carefully folded the letter and placed it back in its spot on the wall. "Emma, please tell me Jennifer knows about this museum. Actually, she's planning to drive down from Denver for the grand opening next month. She said she wouldn't miss it for the world." Jake had found the section labeled Military Veterans and was reading through several letters with obvious emotion. "Reba, you need to see these. The number of soldiers who wrote about listening to your music during deployments is incredible." He handed her a letter written on military stationery. "This is from Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, written from Afghanistan in 2010. Dear Reba, I'm writing this from Kandahar Province, where I'm serving my 2nd deployment. Your CD, Keep On Loving You, has been my constant companion for the past 18 months. When we're out on patrol and things get scary, I think about the lyrics to Turn on the Radio and imagine coming home to my family and dancing in my kitchen again. Your music reminds me that there's a beautiful, normal world waiting for me back home, and it's worth fighting to protect. Thank you for keeping me connected to hope." And this one, Jake continued, handing her another letter, is from her husband. "Dear Reba, my wife Maria wrote to you from Afghanistan, but she never got to send the letter because she was killed by a roadside bomb 2 weeks later. I found the letter in her personal effects, along with your CD, which was still in her player. I wanted you to know that your music was one of the last things that brought her comfort. At her funeral, we played The Greatest Man I Never Knew, because even though she was a woman, those lyrics about being proud of someone who served with honor felt perfect for her. Thank you for being part of her final chapter." Reba had to sit down. The weight of these stories, the responsibility of knowing that her music had been present in such profound moments of people's lives, was almost too much to comprehend. "There are hundreds more like that," Emma said gently. "Military families, first responders, people in high-stress jobs who found comfort and strength in your songs." Linda Carter was reading from a different section entirely. Over here are letters from healthcare workers. Listen to this one. "Dear Reba, I'm a pediatric oncology nurse, and for 15 years, I've been using your music as part of our therapy program for children with cancer. Songs like I'll Be and What If have helped children and families process their fears and find moments of peace during treatment. Last month, an 8-year-old patient named Tommy requested that we play Sweet Dreams while he was receiving chemotherapy. He said it made him think about all the good dreams he was going to have when he got better. Tommy is now in remission, and his family credits your music as being a crucial part of his healing process. And this one," Linda continued, her voice shaking slightly, "is from a hospice worker. I've been with over 200 families during their final goodbyes, and I can't tell you how many times someone has requested your music during those last hours. Tears in Heaven, The Greatest Man I Never Knew, and especially Consider Me Gone have provided comfort to so many people facing the end of life. Your voice has been present during some of the most sacred moments I've ever witnessed." Reba felt overwhelmed by the scope of what she was hearing. "Emma, I had no idea. I mean, you hope your music connects with people, but this level of impact, it's almost frightening." "Why frightening?" Emma asked. "Because it makes me realize how much responsibility comes with having a platform like mine. These people trusted me with their most vulnerable moments. What if I had made different choices? What if I had recorded different songs?" Jake looked up from another section of letters. "But that's exactly the point, isn't it? You did make the right choices. You chose to be authentic, to sing about real life, to be vulnerable about your own struggles. That's why people connected with your music in such deep ways." Emma gestured toward another wall. "Speaking of your own struggles, we have a section of letters from people who found strength in how you handled your public difficulties. Your divorce, the plane crash that killed your band members, your business setbacks. People wrote about learning from your example of how to grieve publicly while still maintaining dignity and hope." Reba walked over to that section and found herself face to face with a letter written in careful handwriting on yellow legal paper. "This one is from someone named Robert Chen," she said, recognizing the name as the building's owner. She began to read. "Dear Reba, I wanted to tell you about my daughter Amy, who died in a car accident in 1995. She was 22 years old and had just graduated from college. After she died, I couldn't understand how life was supposed to continue. Then I read an interview where you talked about losing your band members in the plane crash, and you said something that changed my perspective forever. You said that grief is the price we pay for having had the privilege of loving someone deeply, and that the goal isn't to get over the loss, but to learn to carry it with grace." Reba continued reading through tears. "Those words gave me permission to stop trying to get better and start trying to honor Amy's memory by living with purpose. I decided to use my resources to help create spaces where healing could happen. When Emma approached me about this museum, I knew immediately that it was exactly the kind of project Amy would have supported. This building is donated in memory of my daughter, who taught me that the most beautiful thing we can do with our pain is transform it into something that helps other people heal." "Oh my God," Reba whispered. "Mr. Chen is Amy's father?" "Yes, and he's here today, actually. He wanted to meet you personally." As if summoned by their conversation, an elderly Asian man with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor appeared from behind one of the reading areas. He approached Reba with obvious nervousness. "Ms. McEntire, I'm Robert Chen. Thank you for allowing us to create this space." Reba immediately pulled him into a hug, Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm honored that Amy's memory is part of this place. Amy loved your music, he replied, his voice thick with emotion. She used to say that you sang like someone who understood that life was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. When I read all these letters and saw how many other people felt the same way, I knew this museum needed to exist. Emma handed Reba another letter. This one might interest you. It's from a music teacher in rural Montana. Reba opened the envelope and read, "Dear Reba, I teach elementary school music in a town of 800 people. And every year I use your story as an example for my students of how someone from a small place can achieve big dreams without forgetting where they came from. But more than that, I use your songs to teach them about emotional intelligence, how to identify and express feelings in healthy ways. When we study fancy, we talk about resilience and survival. When we study The Greatest Man I Never Knew, we talk about regret and the importance of saying what needs to be said. Your catalog is like a curriculum for understanding the human experience." And this one, Emma continued, handing her another letter, is from someone who started a support group for women leaving abusive relationships. She calls it the Fancy Club and uses your songs as conversation starters for women to share their stories and find strength in each other. Letter after letter revealed the same themes: people finding courage, healing from trauma, learning to advocate for themselves, discovering that their small-town roots were assets rather than limitations, understanding that vulnerability was a form of strength. But it was a letter written in a child's handwriting that finally broke Reba completely. "Dear Reba," she read through streaming tears, "My name is Sophie, and I am 9 years old. My mommy played your songs for me when she was sick with cancer. Her favorite was Consider Me Gone, because she said it helped her not be scared about leaving me and Daddy. When Mommy died last year, I was very sad and angry. But then Daddy played I'll Be and told me that just like the song says, Mommy will always be watching over me. Now, when I miss her really bad, I listen to your music and pretend she is singing to me. Thank you for helping my mommy be brave and for helping me remember that love doesn't go away even when people do. Love, Sophie. P.S. Daddy says when I grow up, I can sing just like you if I practice hard." Reba couldn't continue reading. She sank into the nearest chair, overwhelmed by the profound responsibility and privilege of knowing that her music had been present during such sacred moments. Linda Carter knelt beside her chair. "Dear, are you all right? I never imagined. When you're recording songs, you hope they'll connect with people, but you don't think about them being there during the most important moments of people's lives. These letters, they're not just fan mail. They're testimonies." Emma sat in the chair across from her. "That's exactly what they are. And that's why we felt this museum was so important. Your music hasn't just entertained people, it's been a source of strength, comfort, and healing for millions of people over 4 decades. But what if I hadn't lived up to that responsibility? What if I had made different choices in my career?" Jake looked up from where he'd been reading letters from the addiction recovery section. "But you did live up to it. Look around this room, Reba. Look at all these lives that were touched. All these people who found exactly what they needed in your music exactly when they needed it. That doesn't happen by accident." Robert Chen spoke quietly from where he'd been standing. "Ms. McEntire, may I share something with you?" Reba nodded, still wiping tears from her eyes. "When my daughter Amy died, I was angry at God, angry at the world, angry at music and art and anything that claimed to bring beauty into a world that could be so cruel. But then I heard you sing Tears in Heaven at that tribute concert, and I realized that art doesn't exist to pretend that life isn't painful. It exists to help us find meaning in the pain, to help us feel less alone in our suffering. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Every letter in this room represents someone who was struggling with something: loss, fear, abuse, addiction, illness, loneliness. And your music helped them find a way through it. Not around it, not over it, but through it. That's a sacred gift. Emma stood and walked to a display case in the center of the room. Reba, there's one more thing in this room I want you to see. Inside the case was a simple spiral notebook, well worn and obviously much used. What is it? It's a journal kept by a woman named Catherine Miller. She was a single mother of 3 who was diagnosed with terminal cancer at age 35. She decided to keep a record of her final year, and she wrote extensively about how different songs helped her process different stages of her illness and her relationship with her children. Emma opened the case and carefully removed the journal. Her sister sent this to us along with a letter explaining that Catherine had specifically requested that if we ever created something like this museum, her journal should be included. She wanted other people facing similar situations to know they weren't alone. Reba took the journal with trembling hands and opened to a random page. March 15th, she read aloud. Had to tell the kids today that Mommy isn't going to get better. Sarah asked if I was going to turn into an angel, and I didn't know what to say. Tonight, after they went to bed, I played I'll Be about 50 times and cried until I couldn't cry anymore. But somewhere in that song, I found the words I needed. Tomorrow, I'm going to tell them that even when my body isn't here anymore, the love I have for them will always be here, watching over them, cheering them on, helping them be brave. Reba's voice makes it sound true, makes it sound like a promise instead of just something people say to make kids feel better. She turned a few pages and continued reading. April 22nd. Tommy had a nightmare about me dying, and nothing I said seemed to help. Finally, I played Sweet Dreams and held him while we listened together. He said the song made him feel like even his bad dreams could turn into good ones if he was brave enough to keep sleeping. Kids understand music in ways adults forget how to. Page after page revealed Catherine's journey through her final months, with Reba's songs serving as a soundtrack to her process of saying goodbye to her children and preparing them for life without her. The final entry, Emma said softly, was written just 3 days before she died. Reba found the last page with writing and read, I don't know if Reba McEntire will ever know that her music helped a dying mother figure out how to love her children enough to let them go. But I hope someday she understands that artists like her don't just make music. They make tools for healing, tools for saying goodbye, tools for holding on and letting go at the same time. My children will grow up knowing that love is stronger than death because someone had the courage to sing about it in a way that made it feel true. Thank you, Reba, for being part of our love story. The room fell completely silent except for the quiet sound of Reba crying. After several minutes, she closed the journal carefully and handed it back to Emma. What happened to her children? They're teenagers now, being raised by Catherine's sister, and they're all musical. They started a small band called Catherine's Angels that performs at local charity events. They always include at least one of your songs in every set. Reba stood up slowly, feeling the weight of everything she'd learned in this room. Emma, I need to understand something. All these letters, all these stories, they can't all be unusual cases. How common are experiences like these? That's what we discovered when we started this project. They're not unusual at all. For every letter we received, people mentioned 5 or 10 or 20 other people they knew who had similar stories. We estimate that over the course of your career, Your music has been present during major life events for millions of people. Linda Carter had been quietly reading letters from the grief section. Reba, I've been a nurse for over 30 years, and I can tell you that music is one of the most powerful healing tools we have. But it only works when it's authentic, when it comes from a place of truth. That's why your songs have had such impact, because you've never been afraid to sing about the difficult parts of life. Jake nodded in agreement. In my experience with veterans, the music that helps the most is the music that acknowledges pain without trying to fix it or explain it away. Your songs do that. They say, yes, this is hard, and it's okay that it's hard, and you're not alone in it being hard. Emma gestured around the room. These letters represent 40 years of people finding exactly what they needed in your music, exactly when they needed it. That's not coincidence, Reba. That's the result of a lifetime of choices to be honest, to be vulnerable, to use your platform to tell truth about the human experience. As they prepared to leave the letters room, Reba took one final look around at the thousands of testimonies covering the walls. Can I ask you something, Emma? What gave you the idea that this was something the world needed? Emma smiled. Actually, it was a conversation I had with my father before he died. He'd been a music teacher for 40 years, and he always said that the best artists weren't the ones with the most technical skill or the biggest voices. They were the ones who could make you feel like they understood your life, like they'd been where you were and survived to tell about it. He said you were the perfect example of that kind of artist. Your father sounds like a wise man. He was, and he would have loved to see this place. As they walked toward the fourth room, Reba felt a profound shift in how she understood her own life and career. For decades, she'd measured her success by external metrics: album sales, chart positions, awards, sold-out shows. But this museum was showing her a completely different way to measure a life's work, by the number of people who found strength, comfort, hope, and healing in what you created. Emma, before we see the next room, I need to tell you something. This experience is changing how I think about everything. My past, my purpose, my legacy. I don't know how I can ever adequately thank you for giving me this gift. The thanks go both ways, Reba. You gave us the gift first. 40 years of honest, courageous music that helped millions of people navigate the most difficult and beautiful moments of their lives. This museum is just our way of saying thank you back. As they approached the entrance to the fourth room, Reba steeled herself for whatever emotional revelations awaited. But she was beginning to understand that this wasn't just a museum about her career. It was a testament to the power of authentic art to heal, inspire, and transform lives in ways the artist might never even know about. The fourth room was the most surprising yet. Instead of displays or exhibits, it was designed as a comfortable living room with soft couches, warm lighting, and walls covered with what appeared to be enlarged photographs. But as Reba looked closer, she realized these weren't just any photographs. They were candid shots of her throughout her career, but specifically capturing moments of vulnerability, struggle, and perseverance. Emma, how did you get all of these? Photographers, journalists, and people who worked with you over the years contributed them. But these aren't the typical publicity shots or red carpet photos. These are the behind-the-scenes moments that show the real person behind the public persona. Reba approached the first photograph, which showed her sitting alone in what appeared to be an empty arena, her head in her hands. She remembered the moment immediately. This was taken in Houston in 1991, right after we got word about the plane crash. I'd just learned that my tour manager and 7 band members had died, and I was trying to figure out how to go on stage that night and perform. The photographer, David Martinez, said you sat there for almost an hour. And then you stood up, walked onto that stage, and gave one of the most powerful performances he'd ever witnessed. He said watching you that night taught him something profound about courage, that it's not the absence of fear or pain, but the decision to do what needs to be done, despite the fear and pain. The next photograph showed Reba in a recording studio, visibly emotional while singing into a microphone. Tears were streaming down her face, but her posture showed complete commitment to the performance. That's from the session where I recorded "The Greatest Man I Never Knew." Reba said softly, "I was thinking about my relationship with my father, about all the things we never said to each other before he died. I couldn't get through the song without crying, but the producer kept the take because he said the emotion was what made it real." Jake was studying a photograph that showed Reba signing autographs outside what appeared to be a children's hospital. "Look at this one. You can see how exhausted you are, but you're still taking time with each child." "That was during my divorce proceedings," Reba remembered. "I'd been in court all day dealing with lawyers and paperwork, and I felt like my world was falling apart. But I'd promised those kids I'd come visit, and seeing their faces, hearing their stories about fighting cancer and other illnesses, it reminded me that my problems were temporary, but their courage was inspiring." Emma guided them to a section of photographs labeled "Private Moments of Public Struggles." These images document times when you were facing personal difficulties but still fulfilled your professional obligations. People contributed these because they wanted to show how you handled adversity with grace. One photograph showed Reba performing on stage, smiling and energetic, with a date stamp indicating it was taken just days after her father's funeral. Another showed her at a charity event, clearly exhausted but still engaged with fans and supporters. A third captured her in a recording studio, working on what the caption indicated was her comeback album after a period of commercial disappointment. "What strikes me about all these photos," Linda Carter observed, "is that they show someone who never let personal pain become an excuse to let other people down." "That's exactly why we included them," Emma replied. "So many people wrote to us about finding inspiration in how you handled public difficulties. They said, watching you continue to show up, continue to work, continue to care about others even when you were struggling, gave them permission to do the same in their own lives." But it was a series of 3 photographs on the far wall that stopped Reba in her tracks. They showed her at 3 different ages, in her 20s, 40s, and 60s. And in each one, she was interacting with fans in ways that revealed something essential about her character. The first showed young Reba kneeling down to sign an autograph for a child in a wheelchair, taking time to have a real conversation rather than just a quick signature. The second showed her at what appeared to be a meet and greet, listening intently to an elderly woman who was obviously sharing something deeply personal. The third, more recent, showed her embracing a young soldier at what appeared to be a military base. "These 3 photos span almost 40 years," Emma explained. "But they were contributed by 3 different photographers who didn't know each other. They all said the same thing, that what struck them wasn't just that you were kind to fans, but that you seemed genuinely interested in their stories, genuinely moved by their experiences." Robert Chen had been quietly studying a wall of photographs that seemed to focus on Reba's interactions with other artists. "Ms. McEntire, these photos tell a story about leadership in the music industry that I don't think many people know. The images showed Reba mentoring younger artists, supporting colleagues during difficult times, and using her platform to highlight the work of others. One particularly powerful image showed her at what appeared to be a benefit concert, standing with her arm around a much younger female artist who was obviously nervous about performing. "That's from the tornado relief concert in 1999, Reba remembered. That young singer was terrified to perform in front of such a big audience, and I could see she was about to back out. So I told her we'd go on stage together, that I'd stay right beside her for her entire set. The photographer said that after your performance together, that young woman told him it was the moment she decided she really could have a career in music. Emma added. She said having Reba McEntire believe in her made her believe in herself. And this one, Robert Chen continued, pointing to another photograph, shows you at an industry event. But you're not networking with executives or celebrities. You're sitting with the sound technicians and roadies, treating them like they're the most important people in the room. Reba laughed. Well, they are. You can't have a good show without good people behind the scenes. Plus, they always have the best stories. But Emma's expression had grown more serious. Reba, this room is actually about more than just showing your character through photographs. It's about something we discovered while putting this museum together that we think you need to know. She led them to a comfortable seating area where several thick binders waited on a coffee table. What are those? These are collections of articles, interviews, and testimonials from people who've worked with you over the years. Producers, musicians, venue staff, radio programmers, journalists, other artists. We reached out to hundreds of people who've had professional interactions with you, and we kept hearing the same themes over and over. Emma opened the first binder and began reading. This is from Charlie Williams, who was your sound engineer for 15 years. He wrote, "In 40 years of working in the music industry, I've worked with artists who were talented, artists who were successful, and artists who were kind. But Reba was the first artist I ever worked with who was all three consistently. She never forgot that every person on her team was contributing to something bigger than themselves. And she made everyone feel valued and important." Jake picked up another binder. This one is from musicians who've played in your band over the years. Listen to this. Playing in Reba's band wasn't just a job. It was like being part of a family. She knew our wives' names, our children's birthdays, our personal struggles and dreams. When my son was diagnosed with leukemia, Reba not only gave me all the time off I needed, she organized fundraisers to help with medical expenses and personally visited him in the hospital. That's not a boss. That's a leader. And this one, Linda Carter added, reading from a third binder, is from venue staff around the country. Most big stars barely acknowledge the people who work at the venues, but Reba always made a point of thanking everyone personally. The ushers, the security guards, the cleaning staff. She remembered people from venue to venue, asked about their families, treated everyone with genuine respect. Working a Reba McEntire show was always a pleasure, because she created an atmosphere where everyone felt appreciated. Reba felt overwhelmed. I don't understand why this is significant enough to be part of a museum. Emma sat forward. Because it shows something important about how real leadership works. You didn't just succeed in your career. You succeeded in a way that lifted up everyone around you. And that approach created a ripple effect that went far beyond your immediate circle. Nadine Bantwin-Dwight. She opened another binder filled with letters from radio programmers. Look at these. Radio people from small markets all over the country, writing about how you always made time for local interviews, how you promoted regional artists alongside your own work, how you used your platform to support local charities and causes. This is from a program director in Nebraska. Emma continued reading. He says, Reba McEntire could have just focused on major markets and big cities, but she always understood that country music's heart was in small towns and rural communities. She never forgot where she came from, and she never acted like she was too big for the places and people that supported her career. Because of her example, our station started a program to showcase local musicians, and we've helped launch several successful careers. Robert Chen spoke up. Ms. McEntire, What Emma is trying to show you is that your influence extends far beyond your music. You've influenced how people think about leadership, about success, about using power and platform responsibly. But I was just trying to do right by people. That's how I was raised. Exactly, Emma said. And in an industry that often rewards ego and self-promotion, your approach was revolutionary. You proved that you could be enormously successful while still being genuinely kind, while still treating everyone with respect, while still using your success to help others succeed too. Jake had found a section devoted to testimonials from other female artists. Reba, listen to this one. It's from a country singer who started her career in the early 2000s. When I was starting out, everyone told me I had to choose between being respected and being liked, between being strong and being feminine, between being successful and being nice. Then I met Reba McEntire, and I realized those were all false choices. She showed me that you could be all of those things at once, that strength and kindness weren't opposites but partners. She changed not just how I approached my career, but how I approached my life. And this one, Linda Carter added, is from a male artist. Reba McEntire taught me that real strength isn't about dominating other people or protecting your position at all costs. It's about using your success to create opportunities for others, about lifting people up instead of pushing them down. Watching her career taught me how to be a better man, not just a better artist. The testimonials continued, painting a picture of someone who had not only achieved remarkable personal success, but had done so in a way that created positive change throughout the industry. There's one more thing we need to show you, Emma said, her voice growing serious. It's something we discovered that we think might be difficult for you to hear, but it's important. She led them to a final display area where newspaper clippings and magazine articles were arranged chronologically, spanning Reba's entire career. These are articles about times when you faced criticism, setbacks, or failures. But we included them because they show something crucial about resilience and how you handle adversity. Reba saw headlines about her divorce, about commercial disappointments, about industry criticisms, about personal losses. But alongside each negative article was a positive one showing how she had responded to each setback. What we noticed, Emma explained, is that every time you faced a major challenge, you used it as an opportunity to grow, to help others, or to create something meaningful. When your marriage ended, you channeled that pain into some of your most powerful songs about resilience. When you lost band members in the plane crash, you established a scholarship fund in their memory. When younger artists started dominating the charts, you became a mentor instead of a competitor. This pattern of turning pain into purpose, setbacks into comebacks, losses into legacy, that's what made people see you as more than just an entertainer, Robert Chen observed. That's what made you a role model. Reba felt the weight of everything she was learning about her own life and impact. Emma, I have to be honest with you. All of this is overwhelming. I'm not sure I deserve the kind of recognition this museum represents. That's exactly why you do deserve it, Emma replied firmly. Because you've never seen yourself as someone who was owed anything. You've always seen your success as an opportunity to serve others, to lift others up, to use your platform responsibly. That humility, combined with your talent and work ethic, is what made you legendary. Jake stood up and walked to a window that looked out over Music Row. Reba, I think what Emma is trying to help you understand is that this museum isn't just about celebrating your career. It's about preserving an example of how to live and work with integrity, how to handle both success and failure with grace, how to use whatever platform you're given to make the world a little bit better. And tomorrow, Emma added, when we open this museum to the public, people aren't just going to come to see artifacts from your career. They're going to come to be inspired by an example of what's possible when someone chooses to live their life with authenticity, courage, and compassion. As they prepared to leave the fourth room, Reba felt a profound sense of responsibility settling over her. She was beginning to understand that this museum wasn't just about her past. It was about the ongoing impact of the choices she continued to make every day. "Emma, there's one more room, isn't there?" "Yes. And it might be the most important one of all." The final room was completely different from the others. Instead of displays or artifacts, it was designed as a simple amphitheater with several rows of chairs facing a small stage. The walls were lined with windows that looked out over Nashville, and the afternoon sun was beginning to cast long shadows across the room. "What is this space for?" Reba asked. "This is the heart of the museum," Emma replied. "It's called the Legacy Theater, and it's where we'll host performances, discussions, workshops, and educational programs. But today, it's where we're going to hold the dedication ceremony." "Dedication ceremony?" "Reba, this museum isn't just about preserving your past. It's about inspiring future generations of artists and leaders. And we have some people here who wanted to be part of dedicating this space to that mission." As Emma spoke, people began filing into the theater. Reba recognized some faces: Robert Chen, Jake Harrison, Linda Carter. But many were strangers. Young and old, they came from diverse backgrounds, but they all shared a common expression of reverence and excitement. Who are all these people? They're representatives of the communities your music has touched. Teachers who've used your songs in their classrooms, social workers who've found your music helpful in their practice, military chaplains who've included your songs in services, addiction counselors who recommend your music as part of recovery programs. As the theater filled, Emma guided Reba to a seat in the front row. "Before we begin the ceremony, there's something I need to tell you about this room specifically." She pointed to a small plaque near the stage that read, "In memory of all those whose stories live on through music. We've received letters and donations from families who lost loved ones, people who found comfort in your music during their grief, and wanted to ensure that other grieving families would have access to that same comfort. This theater is dedicated to their memory and to the healing power of authentic art." A young woman approached the microphone on the stage. She appeared to be in her early 20s, with long, dark hair and the confident posture of someone accustomed to performing. "Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Patterson, and I'm a senior at Belmont University studying music therapy. I asked Ms. Richardson if I could be the one to open today's ceremony because Reba McEntire's music has been central to my life and my chosen career." Jessica's voice was clear and strong. "When I was 12 years old, my parents went through a very difficult divorce. I was angry, confused, and felt like my whole world was falling apart. My grandmother, trying to help me process my emotions, played me a song called The Greatest Man I Never Knew. She told me it was okay to be sad about things that were lost, but that sadness didn't have to turn into bitterness." Reba felt tears forming as Jessica continued. "That song taught me that music could be a tool for healing, and it started me on the path that led to my career in music therapy. Today, I work with children and families facing trauma, and I use many of Reba's songs in my practice because they model healthy ways to process difficult emotions." Jessica paused and looked directly at Reba. "Ms. McEntire, you probably had no idea when you recorded that song that it would help a 12-year-old girl understand her feelings and eventually choose a career dedicated to helping others heal. But that's the power of authentic art. It creates ripple effects that extend far beyond the artist's intention or awareness." The audience applauded, and Jessica stepped aside as another speaker approached the microphone. "I'm Dr. Michael Foster, and I'm a psychiatrist who specializes in trauma recovery. I want to speak today about the therapeutic value of music that acknowledges pain without trying to minimize or fix it. Dr. Foster's voice was gentle but authoritative. In my practice, I often recommend specific songs to patients who are working through grief, abuse recovery, addiction, or other traumatic experiences. Reba McEntire's catalog is uniquely valuable because it consistently validates difficult emotions while also modeling resilience and hope. He continued, "Songs like Somebody Should Leave give people permission to acknowledge when situations are unhealthy. Songs like Is There Life Out There encourage people to believe they deserve more than just surviving. Songs like Consider Me Gone help people understand that ending one chapter of life doesn't mean ending hope for the future." Dr. Foster looked at Reba directly. "As a mental health professional, I want to thank you for creating music that serves as a form of therapy for millions of people. Your willingness to sing about difficult topics with honesty and compassion has provided healing tools that complement and enhance traditional therapeutic approaches." Speaker after speaker came to the microphone, each representing a different way that Reba's music had been used to heal, inspire, educate, and transform lives. A military chaplain spoke about using her songs in memorial services for fallen soldiers. A literacy teacher explained how she used song lyrics to help children connect with reading. A domestic violence counselor described playing specific songs for women in shelters to help them find courage to rebuild their lives. But it was the final speaker who brought Reba to tears. "My name is Amy Roberts, and I'm 16 years old. I know this might seem weird, but I wanted to speak today to represent all the young people who are just discovering Reba's music and learning from her example." Amy's youth was evident, but her voice carried a maturity beyond her years. "My generation gets told a lot that we're entitled, that we expect success without working for it, that we don't understand the value of authenticity. But when I listen to Reba's music and learn about her career, I see an example of what it looks like to work hard, stay humble, treat people with respect, and use whatever platform you're given to help others." Amy looked around the room. "I'm planning to study music education, and I want to teach kids from small towns like where I'm from that they can achieve their dreams without forgetting their values or abandoning the people who supported them along the way." Reba McEntire's career is like a roadmap for how to be successful while still being a good person. She turned to Reba. "Ms. McEntire, thank you for showing my generation that strength and kindness aren't opposites, that you can be ambitious and humble at the same time, that real success means lifting other people up as you climb." The audience erupted in applause, and Emma gestured for Reba to join her on stage. "Reba, would you be willing to say a few words to close our ceremony?" Reba walked slowly to the microphone, feeling the weight of everything she'd experienced over the past few hours. The room fell silent as she gathered her thoughts. "I came here today thinking I was just satisfying curiosity about a mysterious invitation," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "I had no idea I was about to receive the greatest gift of my life." She paused, looking out at the faces in the audience, young and old, diverse backgrounds, but all connected by the shared experience of finding meaning in music. "For 40 years, I've been getting up on stages and singing songs, hoping they would connect with people, hoping they would matter somehow. But I never really knew if they did. I never knew if the vulnerable moments, the honest songs about pain and loss and hope, actually helped anyone." Reba's voice grew stronger. "Today, I learned that my music has been present during some of the most important moments in thousands of people's lives. I learned that songs I recorded during my own darkest hours became sources of light for other people facing their own darkness." She gestured around the theater. "This museum, These stories, these testimonials, they've taught me something profound about the purpose of art. We don't create music to make ourselves famous or rich, though those things might happen. We create music to build bridges between human hearts, to help people feel less alone in their struggles, to remind each other that we're all just doing our best to make sense of this beautiful, heartbreaking, incredible experience of being alive. The audience was completely still, hanging on every word. Emma, you asked me earlier why I chose to sing about difficult things instead of just happy songs. I think I finally know the answer. It's because the difficult things are where we need each other the most. When life is easy, we can get by on our own. But when life is hard, when we're grieving, when we're scared, when we're trying to find the courage to start over, that's when we need to know we're not alone. Reba's voice began to break with emotion. If my music has helped people feel less alone, if it's given them courage or comfort or hope, then my life has had a purpose beyond anything I ever dared to dream. She looked directly at Emma. Thank you for showing me that the most important awards aren't the ones you can put on a shelf. They're the lives that are touched, the spirits that are lifted, the hearts that are healed. Turning back to the audience, Reba continued, "But this museum isn't really about me. It's about the power of authentic art to change lives, about the importance of using whatever platform we're given to serve others, about the ripple effects of choosing to live and work with integrity." She paused, gathering her thoughts for her final words. To the young people here today, I want you to know that you don't have to choose between being successful and being kind. You don't have to choose between achieving your dreams and staying true to your values. You can be ambitious and humble, strong and gentle, confident and compassionate. Her voice grew passionate. But most importantly, remember that whatever talents you've been given, whatever platform you achieve, whatever success you enjoy, it's not really yours. It's been entrusted to you to use in service of something bigger than yourself. Reba looked around the room one final time. This museum is a reminder that our true legacy isn't measured by what we accomplish for ourselves, but by what we accomplish for others. It's measured by the lives we touch, the people we lift up, the hope we create, and the love we share. She stepped back from the microphone as the audience rose in a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. But Reba wasn't focused on the applause. She was looking at the faces in the crowd. The teacher who would use her example to inspire students, the therapist who would continue using music to heal trauma, the young veteran who had found strength in her songs, the teenager who was learning what authentic leadership looked like. Emma joined her on stage as the applause finally died down. "Reba, there's one more surprise. We have a special guest who wanted to be here for this moment." From the back of the theater, an elderly woman made her way slowly toward the stage with the help of a walker. As she got closer, Reba gasped, "Mrs. Williams?" Dorothy Williams, her elementary school music teacher, smiled broadly as she reached the front of the theater. "Hello, dear. I told Emma I was too old and too sick to travel. But when I heard about this ceremony, I knew I had to be here." Reba immediately came down from the stage and embraced her former teacher. "Mrs. Williams, I can't believe you're here. Reba, I've been watching your career for 40 years, and I've been proud of you every single day. But today, seeing this museum, hearing these stories, witnessing the impact of your life's work, I'm not just proud of your success. I'm proud of the woman you became." The elderly teacher's voice was soft but clear. "You took the music in your bones and used it to heal the world. That's what I always hoped for you." As Reba helped Mrs. Williams to a chair. She realized that this moment, standing in a room full of people whose lives had been touched by her music, embracing the teacher who had first encouraged her musical dreams, was the culmination of everything she'd worked for throughout her career. The museum wasn't just a collection of artifacts from her past. It was a living testament to the power of authentic art to create hope, healing, and connection across generations. It was proof that when someone chooses to live their life with authenticity and use their gifts in service of others, the impact extends far beyond anything they could imagine. As the ceremony concluded and people began to mingle, Reba found herself surrounded by individuals eager to share their personal stories. Each conversation reinforced what she'd learned throughout the day, that her music had been a constant companion to people during their most challenging and transformative moments. Emma approached her as the crowd began to thin. "Reba, how are you feeling?" "Overwhelmed, grateful, humbled, changed." Reba paused, watching Mrs. Williams chatting with some of the younger attendees. "Emma, this experience has fundamentally altered how I understand my life and career. I thought I was just a singer who got lucky and worked hard. I had no idea I was part of something so much bigger." "That's the thing about authentic artists," Emma replied. "They often don't realize the full scope of their impact because they're too focused on doing the work honestly and well." Jake Harrison joined their conversation. "Reba, I wanted to thank you again for what your music has meant to veterans like me. But I also wanted to ask, what happens now? How do you move forward after learning all this?" Reba considered the question carefully. "You know, I think I understand now that my responsibility isn't finished just because I've had a successful career. If anything, knowing the impact my music has had makes me feel more responsible to continue using my platform wisely." Linda Carter, who had been listening nearby, nodded in agreement. "Dear, you've been given a rare gift today. The chance to see your life's work through other people's eyes while you're still here to appreciate it and learn from it." "That's exactly right," Emma added. "Most artists never get to fully understand their legacy while they're still alive to be influenced by that understanding." Robert Chen approached the group, his eyes still showing the emotion of the day's revelations. "Ms. McEntire, I wanted you to know that we plan to expand this museum over time. We'll continue collecting stories, continue documenting the ongoing impact of your work, and continue using this space to educate young artists about authentic leadership and the responsible use of platform and influence. And," Emma added, "we're hoping you'll be involved in that ongoing mission. We'd love for you to participate in workshops, mentoring programs, and educational initiatives here." Reba felt a surge of excitement at the possibility. "Emma, I would be honored to be part of that. In fact, today has given me ideas for new projects, new ways to use my music and my platform to continue serving others." As the afternoon wore on, Reba spent time with each person who had contributed to the museum, listening to their stories and learning about their work. She met teachers who were using her songs to discuss emotional intelligence with their students, social workers who recommended her music to clients dealing with trauma, and young artists who were trying to build careers based on the principles they'd learned from studying her example. But it was a conversation with Jessica Patterson, the music therapy student, that sparked an idea that would shape Reba's future work. "Jessica, tell me more about how you use music in therapy." "Well, music has the ability to access emotions and memories in ways that traditional talk therapy sometimes can't," Jessica explained. "When people hear a song that resonates with their experience, it can help them process feelings they've been unable to express verbally." "And you use my songs specifically?" "Yes, because they're honest about difficult emotions without being hopeless. They acknowledge pain while also modeling resilience. That combination is incredibly powerful for people who are working through trauma." Reba felt a light bulb moment. Jessica, what if we could create a formal program that trains therapists, counselors, and social workers to use music as part of their practice? What if this museum could become a center for that kind of education? Emma's eyes lit up. Reba, that's a brilliant idea. We could host workshops, create certification programs, develop resources for professionals who want to incorporate music into their healing work. And, Jake added, we could extend that to military chaplains, first responder support programs, addiction recovery centers, anywhere people are dealing with trauma and could benefit from music-based healing approaches. The conversation continued to build momentum as the group brainstormed possibilities. They talked about creating scholarship programs for students interested in music therapy, developing curricula for schools that wanted to incorporate emotional learning through music, and establishing partnerships with healthcare systems that were interested in integrative healing approaches. You know what this means? Emma said, her voice filled with excitement. This museum won't just preserve your legacy, it will actively extend it. It will become a place where your life's work continues to impact new generations in new ways. As the sun began to set over Nashville, casting golden light through the theater windows, Reba felt a profound sense of completion and beginning simultaneously. The day had ended one chapter of her understanding about her life and started another. Emma, before I leave today, I need to ask you something. What made you think this was possible? What gave you the faith that this museum could exist? Emma smiled, looking around the room that had been filled with so much emotion and revelation throughout the day. Honestly, it was something my father said before he died. He told me that the most important question anyone can ask about their life is, did I use my gifts to make the world a little bit better? When I started researching your career and talking to people whose lives you'd touched, I realized that you'd been answering that question with your life for 40 years. She paused, gathering her thoughts. And I thought that if one person could have that kind of positive impact just by being authentic and using their platform responsibly, then maybe we needed to preserve that example and use it to inspire others to do the same. Reba felt tears forming again. Emma, you've given me something I never expected to receive. The knowledge that my life has mattered, that the choices I made to stay true to my values while pursuing my dreams actually made a difference. But more than that, Emma continued, you've shown thousands of people that it's possible to be successful without compromising your integrity, to be strong without being hard, to be ambitious without being selfish. In a world that often rewards the opposite values, your example has been a beacon of hope. As they prepared to leave the museum, Reba took one final walk through all the rooms, seeing them now with completely different eyes. The recreated Cheyenne Saloon stage reminded her of how far she'd traveled from that nervous 16-year-old girl. The Grand Ole Opry chairs reminded her of all the people who had found courage in her courage. The wall of letters reminded her that art is ultimately about connection and healing. The photographs reminded her that how you treat people matters as much as what you achieve. And the Legacy Theater reminded her that the most important part of any story is how it inspires the next chapter. Mrs. Williams, who had insisted on staying for the entire ceremony despite her age, was waiting by the front door. Mrs. Williams, I still can't believe you made this trip. Dear, when you've watched a student become everything you hoped they could be, you don't miss the celebration. The elderly teacher's eyes twinkled. Besides, I wanted to see with my own eyes what happens when someone takes the music in their bones and uses it to heal the world. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, wrapped package. I brought you something. Reba carefully unwrapped it to find a faded photograph of herself at age 7, standing next to the old upright piano in Mrs. Williams's classroom, singing with obvious joy and complete abandon. "I've kept this picture on my desk for over 50 years, Mrs. Williams said, "but I think it's time it came home to you. It reminds me, and I hope it will remind you, that the best art comes from the same place that little girl was singing from: pure joy, authentic emotion, and the simple desire to share something beautiful with the world." Reba hugged her former teacher tightly, understanding that this photograph would become one of her most treasured possessions, not because it showed her as a child, but because it captured the spirit that had driven her entire career. As she walked out of the museum and into the Nashville evening, Reba felt fundamentally changed by the day's experiences. She had entered the building thinking she was going to see a collection of artifacts from her past. Instead, she had discovered a roadmap for her future. The museum had shown her that her true legacy wasn't the awards on her walls or the platinum albums in her vault. It was the lives that had been touched, the spirits that had been lifted, the hearts that had been healed by her willingness to be vulnerable, authentic, and honest in her art. But more than that, it had shown her that her work was far from finished. If anything, understanding the impact she'd already had made her feel more responsible to continue using her platform, her voice, and her influence to serve others and inspire positive change. As she drove through the familiar streets of Nashville, Reba began planning her next chapter. She would work with Emma to develop the museum's educational programs. She would mentor young artists who wanted to build careers based on integrity and service. She would continue creating music that acknowledged life's difficulties while offering hope and healing. And she would carry with her always the knowledge that when you choose to live authentically, when you use your gifts in service of something bigger than yourself, when you treat every person you encounter with dignity and respect, the ripple effects extend far beyond anything you could imagine. "The heart remembers home," Reba thought as she pulled into her driveway. And today, she had discovered that home wasn't just a place. It was the knowledge that your life had mattered, that your work had meaning, and that the love you put into the world comes back to you multiplied beyond measure. Tomorrow, she would begin the next chapter of her story, armed with the understanding that the best legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you inspire others to carry forward. 6 months later, the Reba McEntire Museum and Center for Music-Based Healing was bustling with activity. The Legacy Theater hosted weekly workshops where therapists, counselors, educators, and healthcare workers learned to incorporate music into their practice. The scholarship program had awarded its first grants to students pursuing careers in music therapy and arts-based healing. And the museum had welcomed visitors from all 50 states and 37 countries. But for Reba, the most meaningful moment came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, when she was visiting the museum to work on curriculum development for their new mentorship program. She found a young girl, maybe 9 years old, sitting alone in the letters room, reading intently. "Hi there," Reba said gently. "Are you here with your family?" The girl looked up with bright eyes. "My mom's in the theater watching the presentation about music therapy. She's a nurse, and she thinks maybe music could help her patients feel better." "That's wonderful. What are you reading?" "Letters from kids like me whose parents got divorced or died or got sick, and how your songs helped them feel less scared." The girl's voice was matter-of-fact, but Reba could hear the underlying emotion. "My dad left last year, and Mom plays your music sometimes when she's sad." Reba sat down in the chair next to her. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Rachel. And I know who you are. You're the lady who sings about real stuff that happens to real people." "That's right. Do you like music, Rachel?" "I love it. And I think maybe when I grow up, I want to write songs that help people feel better. Just like yours do." Reba smiled, seeing something familiar in Rachel's eyes. the same spark she'd seen in Mrs. Williams's classroom so many decades ago, the same passion for using music to connect with and heal others. "Rachel, would you like me to show you something special?" She led the young girl to a display case she hadn't seen before, one that contained the photograph Mrs. Williams had given her 6 months earlier. "This is a picture of me when I was about your age, standing next to my music teacher's piano. I was singing a song I'd made up about wanting to help people feel happy." Rachel studied the photograph intently. "You look really happy." "I was. And you know what? That happiness, that desire to help people through music, it never went away. It's what drove my whole career." "Really?" "Really. And if you want to write songs that help people, I think that's a wonderful dream. But remember, the most important thing isn't becoming famous or winning awards. The most important thing is staying true to that feeling you have right now. That music can be a gift you give to the world." Rachel nodded solemnly, as if understanding the weight of this advice. "Ms. Reba, do you think my songs could really help people someday?" Reba knelt down to Rachel's level, seeing in this young girl the next generation of artists who might carry forward the mission of using music to heal, inspire, and connect. "Rachel, I think if you write songs from your heart, if you're honest about what life is really like, the hard parts and the beautiful parts, and if you never forget that music is about connecting with other people, then yes, your songs will definitely help people." As Rachel's mother appeared to collect her daughter, Reba realized that this moment, passing on encouragement and wisdom to a young person who dreamed of using music to serve others, was perhaps the most important part of her legacy. The museum had taught her that the true measure of a life well lived wasn't fame or fortune, but the number of people inspired to carry forward your values and mission. And watching Rachel walk away, already humming a melody under her breath, Reba knew that the heart of music, the desire to heal, connect, and inspire, would continue to remember its way home in each new generation. The circle was complete, and it was just beginning.